Hey, I'm Roberto, uncle, dreamer, and Disney kid at heart. As a business profit strategist and community leader, I've had the chance to work with multiple business owners and community leaders ranging from napkin ideas to 8-figure brands. And along the way, there's been some failures, amazing successes, and lots of friendships have been born. Now, community leaders come from all walks of life and business. They might identify as a coach, consultant, speaker, a nonprofit leader, or a maker, but here's the thing. They all have one thing in common. They are purpose-driven brands and leaders seeking to create an even bigger impact in the world with and for their communities. This is the show that brings together community leaders and business leaders with communities to reveal their mistakes and successes to building and creating a highly impactful and profitable community. This is the Connected Community Leader Podcast. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Connected Community Leader Podcast. And I'm here today with my friend, AJ Amyx. Now, I met AJ several years ago at an event that I used to hold Sponsorship Boot Camp, where at that event, what we did was work with authors, speakers, coaches, consultants to be able to go out and get sponsors for their projects, like whether that was a book tour, a speaking tour, or a live event. Had the opportunity to meet AJ that weekend, and even really beforehand had the opportunity to connect with him. And one of the things that I've always appreciated about him is his openness and his willingness to have some of the difficult conversations that people are not willing to have. Those conversations that kind of make you cringe a little bit and might make you a little bit uncomfortable, but once you have them, you know that your life will be changed because of that conversation. So he is a life and business coach for high achievers and for some of Forbes' top social media influencers. And for the past 2 years, HubSpot has listed him as one of the top business coaches. He's also been featured on CNN, Business Insider, and Creative Live, as well as trained well over 15,000 people working with coaches, consultants, and experts around the world. And I can tell you one of the things that I know is that when people follow his processes and his systems, they're going to get some pretty awesome results if they actually do the work. But more importantly, they're going to have a lot of fun along the way. So welcome, AJ.
Thanks, Roberto. Man, that intro sounds too good to be true. It's kind of cool.
I know we should just take it and splice it, and you can use it everywhere else.
That's right. That's right.
So this whole entrepreneurship thing, it's a journey, isn't it?
Very much so, man. It's an unfoldment of layers upon layers upon layers, which becomes a lifelong, never-ending process. And that's part of the fun of it.
It absolutely is. And so, I was sharing with you before we recorded that, we've kind of identified these 10 characteristics of a community CEO, who they are, what they embody, who they serve. And getting to know you over the past several years now, I've got to kind of see your growth and see the consistency. Now, I know some people might say, whoa, AJ's had a few hairstyles over the few years. But I'll tell you, he consistently changes it and he's consistently growing.
Yeah, I'm working on my next hairstyle. It's gonna be long, like Viking looking, Ragnar, Viking. It's gonna be fun.
I like it. We're going to have to pull up like a Game of Thrones poster or something right next to it. So, along the journey, right? What are, would you say is one thing that you really wish you knew when you started in this industry? Because I've got to see you go from rock music to Twitter to really focusing on, the mindset, and then saying that mindset really isn't enough and being able to write a book on it, to focusing on the spiritual elements of the human experience and building a business. So what do you wish that you knew when you first began?
Great question. I wish I would have known about shadow work when I first began, because if you get outside the spiritual communities, most people aren't aware of shadow work. They are terrified of it. They're terrified of the parts of them that they've locked into dark corridors within themselves. Yet I've found time and time again, we all have the capacity to open up those doors. And the more doors that we open up within ourselves, the more in integrity that we become. And the game of life, whether it's marriage, whether it's business, whether it's friendships, whether it's parenthood, it just becomes a lot more freeing, a lot more expansive, a lot more fun. You're able to create a lot more results with a lot less stress. And I wish I would have understood that. And I wish somebody would have like helped guide me to that sooner. That's what I wish.
Awesome. Now, for those that don't know, including myself, I've heard the term before, but haven't dug deep into it. What is shadow work, and where are maybe one or two resources that people might be able to dive into it some?
So one of the resources would be my book, Mindset is Not Enough, ajamyx.com/book. You can get it there. So shadow work is just really the unloved parts of ourselves, right? So oftentimes, depending upon our culture we grew up, depending upon the environments we're raised in, the values that were bestowed upon us from our parents or culture, etc., we all created judgments about this is bad or this is right or this is wrong or this is whatever. And so if we start looking at these things objectively, that's what shadow work is. Like the best illusion I can give somebody, it's almost like think of this swing set that's behind the house in the backyard. And let's say this backyard is like an L-shaped backyard, right? We all have seen those in the suburbia neighborhoods where you have like these L-shaped backyards. And the swing set is right behind the house. And you have like a little child playing on the swing set, and it's night out time. So the floodlights from the house are pointing at the swing set. And so it's really nice and lit up there. And this child is looking over to the dark side of the house where the backyard, usually where like the air conditioning units are and so forth. And they want to play hide and seek. Maybe a friend's over, but they look over there and like, oh, it's dark over there. It's scary over there. I don't want to go over there. But if a child gets up the courage to then just walk into the darkness, the eyes adjust and what was dark actually becomes light. And now all of a sudden, their capacity to play in the backyard has just increased. It has expanded. Doing shadow work, meaning going into the parts of us that we judge as wrong as right, whether it's anger, whether it's sex, whether it's sadness, whether it's fears, going into those and bringing light, bringing objective observation, that is shadow work. And as a result, just like the little child in the backyard, our capacity to play in life is exponentially grown and expanded.
I love that. I love that explanation of that. Thank you for that. And like AJ said, he's got a book that y'all be able to check out there, and we'll make sure that y'all can get all the information on that. And so I love the example of the swing set because I think it's something that everybody can get, even though there's a lot less swing sets these days than there used to be.
It's true. It's true. We had a fort, man, growing up that I loved. We had this huge, ginormous fort. It was amazing.
Yeah. See, we didn't have the outdoor fort. We had my sister and I would man, my mom would get so mad. We would pull all the kitchen furniture and move it into the living room and use brooms and mops and sheets and everything. We had the indoor forts because I liked AC.
Yeah, those were fun too.
I was yeah, I needed the air conditioning. And so, but going back to the example of the swing set, right? And I love how you said, it's hey, when it comes to the house, it's clear. But when you go into that kind of dark place, the eye's able to readjust. And as it readjusts and recalibrates, it reoptimizes, as you're listening, whatever word is right for you, right? As it does that, and then you're able to see what happens there, we can learn a lot from those experiences. And so my guess is that it hasn't been all puppies and kitties and rainbows all these years in business.
No.
And so as you chose to go into some of the shadowy places, the dark places in business to say, hey, how do I challenge the status quo? What would you say, what some people would say, what was your biggest failure, or what became your biggest learning opportunity from something that didn't go as planned?
My biggest learning, I guess, opportunity, we'll call it that, is I unknowingly, I started my business, multiple businesses, even going back to my music days, from this place of I felt like I needed to prove my worthiness. I thought, well, if my dad could tell me good job, then I would be at a place where I'm like, oh man, okay, I'm good. I feel good. I can achieve some success, right? And so I took that, and that's the pressure that then drove me to attempt to create quote unquote success, to create an audience, to create a community, to create whatever it is I felt called to create. Now, the problem with it is it defies the law of being. The law of being states that the world gives us exactly that which we are at our core. And it's a natural law that governs this planet, just like gravity. It's neutral. It doesn't care about race. It doesn't care about gender. It's just a natural law. So here I was attempting to prove my worthiness to exist. And as a result, life's like, you want to prove now? What about now? You want to prove this one? You want some more opportunities to prove? Right? And as a result, the game just became tiring. It become burnt out. So until I could get to a place where I could realize, not just in my mind, but in my core of cores, in my heart, in my soul, that I had nothing to prove, nothing to defend. And from that place, I could then choose like, okay, that mountain of success, quote unquote success, looks pretty fun. Let's go on the journey to experience and create that next level of growth. Not because I have something to prove to my father or to my mother or my grandfather or you or the marketplace. Nobody, not even to myself. It's just like, I'm going to do that because I choose it. That seems fun to me. That's been one of the biggest lessons, because on the other side of that lesson, when we learn to source, meaning internally, nothing out there, our own joy, our own peace, our own enoughness, our own worthiness for security, independence, when we can do that here, then when we go and create, we're leveraging the law of being, where the world's like, hey, you want some more opportunities to express that worthiness, that independence, that success? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And so then the question becomes, cool, well then, as a human being, how good can I stand it? And that's like where I'm at now. It's just like, I don't know, let's find out. And it's a constant like test to see how good can life actually be.
Awesome. Love it. And so as people on that journey to say how good can life really be, right? I'm sure there was some other learning experiences for you. And so for people that are saying either I already have a thriving community and it's awesome and it's great, and we've got a lot of people and they're all hanging out together, but we're not really making any money with it yet. Or one of the things that we've seen is the complete opposite side is, the speaker, the author, the coach, that consultant who is literally going from product to book to creation, feeling that it's just not working because they put their life and their dedication into creating this amazing product, and then they launch it to crickets because they haven't built a community. And so we kind of see these, the two sides, people with thriving amounts of people. I was talking with someone the other day who had a Facebook group of almost 60,000 people, but hadn't quite figured out how to make it profitable yet. To the other extreme, somebody who has courses that sell for, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000, but they don't really have a community that when they launch something, they're just like, man, I want that. How do I get more of that thing that you have? And so you started doing that in the music world, caught social media community early on, had some great success doing that with Twitter early on, way ahead of where Twitter is now, I would say. And so what would you say is like are 3 tips that you would give people to being able to build that profitable community without having to do it from a place that it's always a struggle?
Yeah, great question. I think number one, if someone has a community, we're talking to people who have a community, right? Okay.
Yeah. So either they have a community, and actually, that's actually great clarification. So either they already have a community, but they haven't really asked their people what they want. And so oftentimes, like I said, there's some people, they've got this Facebook group, we'll call it, of, 40, 50, 60,000 people, but haven't quite figured out what to create or to be able to make it profitable. They've done a great job of building a place for people to come together around one certain thing, but haven't quite figured out how to make it to a place where they're able to leave their job. And so it's become stressful because all of these people bought the vision, but they don't have anything for those people to buy to keep the vision going. Or the opposite extreme, which is you have someone who has the thing that people can buy, but they haven't quite figured out how to cast that vision in such a way that people want to rally together with them. And so they keep launching products, but their following's basically crickets. They might have a Facebook group, but it's usually only their buyers. And so they don't have that consistent stream of leads or feedback loop as a leader.
Awesome. So for those people, it becomes really simple. Ask them what their biggest challenge, like what is their single biggest challenge to whatever your area of expertise is. Like I first learned this from Ryan Levesque in his book called, I think it's the Ask Method or something of that nature. You don't have to read the whole book. Just read like the second half of the book, and
Yeah,
everything
Ask.
that's in the
Great book.
book is solid gold. And it's almost so simple to be true, especially if you have a group of 60,000 members, for God's sake, or an email list of 1,000 people or 40,000 people. We just did this with one of my new clients, Steve Dotto, with Dotto Tech. And so we just asked, what is your single biggest challenge to building an online business as a boomer, as a Gen Xer? They told us. And then we created an offer. So the first thing is like ask, what is the big problem? And then the second piece is like then create an offer that's going to solve that big problem. I know this is rocket science, right? It sounds really complicated. And then ask them to buy it. So even with Steve, like, and I do this with ourselves and Project Shift, we sold it before we built it. I think so many people, they make the mistake of putting so much time and energy into building this thing and then praying to the online marketing gods, please let people buy this thing. And then nobody does, or crickets buy it, or one or two people buy it. And it's super frustrating. It's very disappointing. And it really like lets the wind out of your sails. So like this, ask them what their biggest problem is to the thing that you can help them get results in. And then from there, create an irresistible offer. And then from there, ask them to buy it. I find so many people, we talked about, I think I heard you say, there's people who have built thing after thing after thing after thing after thing after thing, and they just keep building thing after thing. Now, this may be a little bit of harsh advice, but those people are addicted to creation. Like they find it soothing to be like, oh, I'm going to go create the product, create the funnel, create. And they're addicted to creation because it keeps them from actually doing the hard thing, which is putting your ass on the line and asking somebody to give you money. Because they're like, oh, if I do that, then I don't know if people, like it's all your bullshit's going to come to the surface. You're going to have to ask people for money. So that's what I do. Like even with Steve, like we collected $40-something thousand up front. And then the reoccurring on the back end of this thing was close to $4,000 a month or something. So over the course of the year, because it's a membership site, like the beta launch, collect nearly 90K, which is awesome. He had a community. All we had to do was ask them what they wanted, create a really good offer, which took about a month for us working back and forth and jamming that out to make it super irresistible. And then we said, hey, you want the thing? And people said, yes. And it was amazing. It's good. So that's what I would tell people to do.
Awesome. I love it. And I guess another question here around that phrase irresistible offer. So one of the things that I do, and I know you do as well, is we tend to not always go with the status quo. In fact, we kind of tend to be pretty unimpressed with it most of the time. So what is your take on people when they're thinking, I need to create something for my community with the people that I serve? You know, there's so much marketing online right now. And what I know is that not all of it is right for everybody. There's so many tactics, so many strategies. And like you said, find out what's right for your people. And so to the person who might be saying, I can't launch something because my community can't afford X, and I've been told the only way to make money with the community is to launch a quote unquote a high ticket offer. What would you say to that leader that's just saying, like, I don't even know what a high ticket offer is. Do I really need to have that? And they're just trying to get going.
Great question. Here's what I would tell them. Number one, a couple things. Don't buy into your audience's money stories. Like they're just stories. They're bullshit. Like lead your community. Like investment in equals commitment out. So number one, lead. Number two, don't allow your own money stories to be projected onto your community. So you really may want to take an objective look, and I don't know, this may resonate with somebody or they may hate me after this, Roberto. We'll find out. Is like, hey, the money story that you have with your community, is it really your community or is it just yours? Like we talked about this the other day with one of my clients. It's like in this game, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And of course, it seems like mostly the people who are in victim consciousness, they like squeak a lot, right? And so as a community leader, we're like, man, we want to, give this squeak some oil, grease it up. And the thing to notice is like, that may just be a very small portion of your community. There may be a ton of people in your community who have plenty of resources, or they're resourceful enough to figure it out. So that's one thing. The next thing I'd say, if we're looking at like, well, do they have to go high ticket? Can they go low ticket? Absolutely. If you feel called to create a low ticket offer, there have been plenty of people. I could think, Roberto, you're one of those people who have created a lot of money from doing what we would say is low ticket things, but creating really good products, right?
Well, and,
So
even like things like Dollar Shave Club.
exactly.
I'd say it worked out for them.
So it's just a different business model. Like if we're doing high ticket, I would say that's anything over 1,000. Some would say it's over 3,000 or 5,000. If we're doing that, then it's going to be probably you're going to deal with less volume to be able to hit your revenue goals. And if you're going to go low ticket, no problem in that. Just understand you're just going to have more customers to reach some of your goals. And that's okay. It's just a business model choice.
Absolutely. Awesome. So yeah, that was one of those things, y'all, as y'all are learning that, people say things and it brings up something in my head and I'm just like, let's go on that rabbit trail real quick. So you are the consummate learner. And what I love about it is that you not only learn, you actually take action on the things that you learn. And sometimes some of that action is being like, cool, it was cool to know that, but that's not for me.
Yep.
So what would you say are some of the best, like either books or courses or podcasts that have helped you in your journey in building your community?
Yeah, Google Books, because I read a ton. So Neville Goddard's Your Faith is Your Fortune. That was a life-changing book for me, huge. I'm living in the Course in Miracles right now. That's a life-changing book for me. Like for me, it's like, and then maybe it's just me, the spiritual books, like the older spiritual like texts, like totally move me and do something to my soul that gives me amount of power to go out and create. I can't explain it. It works for me. It works for my clients. If I go business, I would probably have to say like .com Secrets by Russell Brunson and also Expert Secrets. Like those are really good books. Like if you are a course creator, if you're a coach, if you're a consultant, and you haven't consumed those two pieces of literature, like I honestly got to say they're probably mandatory. They're really, really darn good for giving you the blueprint to figure out how to build a personal brand. And honestly, I think those principles, Roberto, and I could be wrong, but I'll go on record and say this. I think those principles that Russell talks about will stand the test of time.
I really think they do. And, one of the great things about business books, right, is that when they're built on principles, very much like you've created the roadmap for your clients, and we have been unveiling the profitable community blueprint out to people, what we've been doing to build profitable communities even before they were really called communities. This process that we've followed is that when something's based on a principle, then you have the opportunity to say, okay, what is the strategy or the tactic that we use to then implement that? And so I have not read Expert Secrets, so I can't say to that one, but I can say on .com I have read it. And I would agree with you that based on the principles that are there, it's essential. Well, it's essential reading material, but there are also these principles that you can then say, okay, hey, this is how I could do this with a tool like ClickFunnels. However, I can take that same principle and apply it with ActiveCampaign or Kajabi or Ontraport because
Absolutely.
it's the principle of it. And so I definitely agree with you on that, is that, and by the way, any of you writing books, that's something else that I think AJ and I would both agree on is, as you write that food book, as I say, like the book that actually puts food on your table, that it is based on principles of business or principles of whatever it is that you're teaching, and not just whatever the latest hype is. And it's actually a mistake that I made early on in my career. We created an online course in 2012 that, I thought it was amazing. It actually really was pretty amazing until it was outdated 18 months later, because we spent so much time teaching the strategies that were working at that point in social media that 2 years later, we had to go back and re-record the course all over because we were teaching strategies and not the principles. And that's what allowed us to go back and reopen. So I definitely agree with you. So I guess coming here to a close, what one piece of advice would you give people that want to build a community for the long haul? It's not just, let me do something pop up, let me go out and make a quick buck. What advice would you give people that are in this for the long haul about truly building a community around them?
I would say find that problem that you feel called to like solve, and then build a community around that. But don't feel like you're going to be pigeonholed, like, oh well, if I'm only going to, I don't know, I'll just use this as an example, which is not even relevant, but we'll go with it. If you're going to build a community around using Twitter to generate leads and sales, don't think like, oh, all I can do is talk about Twitter and leads and sales, because you may be, if like you feel called to talk about spiritual principles or shadow work or the other things that are like around the topic, that's totally okay. And actually, it would be like a huge advantage to your community, because it allows you to be the light, be the leader. And that's what I would say is like, lead your people, like be willing to be vulnerable and share your mistakes. Don't think that you have to be the guy or the gal in the ivory tower that has all of the answers, all the solutions. Like, people are hungry for truth. They're hungry for just like real people, people who are willing to bleed and die with them in the trenches. And as long as you're willing to be like, hey, I'm 2 steps ahead of you, but I'm in the trench with you, that's actually going to create a very like deep bonded sense of community. And you won't buy into like imposter syndrome or anything of that nature, because you realize like, hey, you're just a couple steps ahead of your people. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, stay committed, and you just like, you kind of solidify your leadership.
Awesome. I love that. And using the example of Twitter, as you mentioned, and I think this is, you're actually a living, breathing example of this, is that, as you build that community, as you get that audience, that as you go through your own life changes, as you go through your business changes, one of the amazing things that most community leaders see is that as they've built this initial audience, AJ mentioned, looking at shadow work or spiritualities, that people will come to you for one thing. But once they have that relationship with you, they kind of get to see those other layers. And as you grow in your journey, they get to grow with you. And I think that that's something that really surprised me, that I didn't know. We started this business in 2009, and to have people that 11 years later are still customers blows my mind, because there's been so many rebirths or pivots in the business over the year as things have been born, and you've seen that yourself. And so tell us a bit about this book as part of that pivot, because I think it's important for leaders to have a positive mindset, but to also know that, well, you kind of need a little bit more to it. Because I mean, you can have like, for example, I love Abraham Hicks. Love it. I've got the money and law of attraction cards. I got to pull my card. I got to read it. And while that is something that gets me going, it keeps me going, there is a difference between what keeps me grounded and going on one side versus the actual business side. And while there is a way to unify them, you kind of need both, right? And so tell us about this, more about your book, what people can learn in the book, and where they can grab it.
Yeah, so they can grab it at ajamyx.com/book. And so it's called Mindset is Not Enough. And so what I found in this online entrepreneurial community is there's 3 camps. Most people only talk about the mindset camp, where they're like, okay, if we get our mind right, we can ultimately think our way out of problems and into actions and into results. And there's a little bit of validity to that. Like, there is value in having a sharp mindset. And then there's another camp that's like, you know what? It's all about skill set. It's all about strategic action. So that camp always thinks like they just have to do their way into action, do their way into results. And there's value in that camp as well. But at some point in time, even if our mindset's on point, even if our strategic action or skill set is on point, it seems like we hit like this invisible ceiling where, as an entrepreneur, we stall out for some reason. And as a result, then we're like, okay, well, it's my mindset. I just need to get that sharper. And we try to do that, and we're like, that's not working. Like, okay, I just need to do more. And we're already like fucking burnt out. So it's like, I don't have anything to give anymore. And so I've learned there's this third camp, which is I call like body set. And so body set it's really learning how to leverage our feelings to propel us into a place of power rather than force. And unless we have our body set integrated into our navigation, like, we're just going to continue just hitting that invisible ceiling and staying stuck and stalled out.
Awesome. I love that. So once again, y'all can grab that book over at AJ Amyx /book. Be sure to follow AJ, connect with him. He's got a lot of great information, and it has been a joy to have you here today, but also on a personal note, it's been a joy to really see your journey since I want to say 2013. And so over the past 7 years to kind of be able to see the growth and to see the evolution of all the brands, but also you as yourself, and to see that consistency to your commitment to your people and to your community. So ladies and gentlemen, invite y'all to stay with us. Be sure to subscribe. And if you know any other community leaders or coaches, speakers, and consultants that want to build and create a highly engaged and profitable community, consider sharing this with them. And if not, well, invite them, screw them out of a few minutes of their time. But either way, be sure to join the Facebook group over at robertoteaches.com. And we look forward to continuing sharing this journey with you.